Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Pramod Varma. I'm the chief architect of many of India's large-scale projects such as the Aadhaar identity project, UPI, or the payment project, and recently now the open protocols and open network project. Pleasure to be here and a pleasure to talk to all of you. Today, I would like to speak to you about how India is building digital infrastructure for 1 billion people, especially on the topic of what is a transition from a platform thinking to a network thinking. So many of you probably know, and some of you may not know, India is extremely large and diverse. We have about 1.36 billion people, 22 official languages. Actually, we have 120, I think, practicing languages and few hundred languages still very much alive. 15 million businesses, that is formal businesses. We have probably 100, 200 million micro, nano entrepreneurs doing businesses as well, but they're not even formal. Very interestingly, less than 5% pay income tax. We have a common business tax, the GST system, 1 billion mobile connections and 800 million internet users. So we are a young, vibrant, large, diverse, aspirational, connected country, period. And that causes a lot of different way of thinking how to build solutions for this large diversity. And when you look at most of the products and services, you will realize that they are actually not penetrated beyond the top 10, 15%. Banking, savings, lending, healthcare, and it's very common that market players, entrepreneurs like you, or market players who are building products and services, find fundamentally the ability to reach beyond the top 100 million people very hard. And that primarily comes from cost of acquisition, cost of engagement, and cost of trust. There's no data, there is no way to verify papers and so on. So mostly the markets and the solutions and products offered by the market takes it to the first 100 million people at best. But we have 900 million adults. So we have to realize that we are barely 10% of the country. That's not fair, because that does not create an inclusive development environment. And so if you unbundle, and when we were looking at the last decade as we were building, it finally comes down to the 3 elements of reducing the cost and reducing the friction, right? And which we spoke about: cost of acquisition, engagement, and trust. It comes down to these 3 things. One, cost of acquisition requires, especially banking and financial services and so on, requires, or business services as well, an identity, a digital identity, and not paper identity. Digital identity for people, digital identity for companies, and digital identities for things that are necessary, and digital identity that is authenticable and verifiable. So we worked on a set of elements there. And then, of course, the other very important aspect of the ownership of assets, verifiable assets, having a land or having a car or having balance in the bank or having being a good taxpayer is not enough if you can't make verifiable claims about it. Because when you walk into a bank, for example, as a small, medium enterprise, the provider of the service has no mechanism to verify what you are saying. So that is as good as not trusting. So the cost of trust is very high. So the digital assets aspect, where not only money and verifiable physical properties, but data and credentials were very much a focus. And Indians are going so digital, 800 million internet connections and 1 billion phone connections. We are very digital. That means people are leaving digital footprints. So it was very important for us to ensure that individuals and SMEs own their own data and credentials in their control as an asset, digital asset, which they can use it to make claims, get it verified, get it traded, and get it transacted. But having these, who I am and what I have, is not enough, and that's today's conversation. Finally, the ability to access market opportunities. access job opportunities, access healthcare and wellness products and services, access to market and access to opportunities necessitates a equitable participation in a transaction network as well. Whether it's a healthcare transaction network, whether it's a commerce transaction network, I may be a one-room home stay provider. How do I participate? How do I get discovered? How do people book my thing? How do we solve that large equitable transaction access to transaction networks in commerce and mobility and healthcare and so on? That's today's focus, and we'll speak very interesting work we are doing on that. See, India solved the first two parts and the financial inclusion beautifully in the last decade by setting up identity infrastructure, data infrastructure. We are the only country who has live, large, real-time, machine-readable, digitally signed data being given back to the people, especially financial data is live. Of course, payments, if you've probably heard about UPI, Unified Payment, and so on. And of course, digital credentials through DigiLocker, electronic signature through e-sign, so that the cost of engagement, cost of acquisition, and cost of trust can be dramatically reduced so that the inclusive products and services can be done. And the numbers are staggering. In identity, we have 1.32 billion people with digital identity. 1 billion authentication gets done every month. In the case of UPI and payment, we do 300 plus, maybe even 400 banks and fintechs participating on the network, 4.5 billion transactions every month. Or in the case of digital credentials, we have 6 billion, or now probably 7 billion digital credentials, verifiable credentials, 100 million users using it. So it's very interesting that in the last decade we took, and all these things, and the bottom point is very, very key, hundreds of platforms and solutions and startups built by people like you. And that's a beauty. India's very vibrant startup community with entrepreneurial energy flowing, and they're all building solutions because all the infrastructure, the identity infrastructure, credentialing infrastructure, payment infrastructure are all API based. And when they're API based, people like you, developers and entrepreneurs, get to build solutions on top of that. That's what we did with banking and fintech. And in this wonderful study published that in a year and a half back that says India went from less than 20% banking in 2011 to more than 85 in less than just about 6.5 years, which otherwise would have taken 4 decades to reach. We compressed it, and all by building digital infrastructure, APIs, and accelerating innovation via people like you. But when it comes to market, the higher order, access to commerce, access to, if you're a taxi driver, how do I offer my services to the market? They have been either highly fragmented, especially in the skilling jobs and healthcare, we see that, highly fragmented, still fragmented, or they're accessed only via 1 or 2 large platforms, very traditional. I mean, you go to a large platform, put up your catalog, and become a supplier or to that provider to that platform. And it's a platform play, right? But they become only 1 or 2 platforms, and they're neither universal, they don't reach everyone. India is still very fragmented in that sense, very less than 10%. Even Amazon, for example, less than 10%. Uber does less than 2% of mobility transactions, for example. So it's very important to understand these platform plays have not been working as well. But if you see worldwide, there's also a significant pushback that's happening against this 1 or 2 monopolistic or duopolistic, structure that winner take all behavior of these platforms have been getting a lot of pushback. So we have to reimagine. We have to reimagine India. How do we enable millions? And we are talking, nano entrepreneurs are a couple of 100 million people. In everybody is a small businessman in that sense, especially with gig economy and so on. Everybody is an entrepreneur by themselves, and everybody is a provider and businessman who's participating. How do we enable them? Equitable market access. How do we ensure competition, innovation? How do we ensure people like you, who are entrepreneurs and developers who are building on top of these APIs, have equal access to the market, a competitive environment, and not already monopolized environment, competitive environment, innovative environment that allows you to build hundreds of solutions. Why hundreds of solutions? Because India's diversity, we spoke about it. So many languages, so much of diversity necessitates many, many solutions to coexist. And that environment needs to be created. And that's the real crux. So India could have looked at two ways, right? As a developing and quasi-socialistic country, we could have said, hey, government will solve everything. That's an old way of thinking, right? That's in one sense a walled garden. That doesn't work very well. And India post-90s had opened up the market. So we are a very market-friendly, innovation-friendly, startup-friendly environment in that sense. So this approach doesn't work at all. Government building all the solutions for all the domains. Or on the other side is fully sort of capitalistic view where you outsource everything to big techs and say you somehow solve commerce and agriculture and healthcare and education and so on. That doesn't work for us either because of the extreme diversity and inclusion and social inclusion necessitated in India. So India is taking a very interesting middle ground, and that's the crux of the idea that India is building a set of interoperable digital foundation, what's in green here, a set of APIs, pretty much a set of APIs and specifications that allows you, all of you, who are entrepreneurs, who are developers, thousands and thousands of developers and good entrepreneurs and a lot of funding, right, for us in India, to build what is in white. So think of this the way large countries built railroads on top of economy, was thriving, or highways were built, physical highways were built. The highways were invested by the government as infrastructure. On top of that economy, private economy, businesses thrive. Think of that same way in the digital world, that we are building digital infrastructure that are interoperable, minimal, but it sort of creates a connector. And on top of that, you create a slew of solutions in very domain. And so if you think from first principles, this goes back to this. Every market, we see this. Every market has a set of providers who says, I have something to offer. I am a small taxi driver. I am offering a plumbing services. I am a physiotherapist who is local, available for doing therapy sessions for you, maybe at home. In India, a lot of home services happen. So it's a very common thing. And on the other side, consumers like us, a lot of says, I want services. And traditionally, this has always existed in any formal organized society, right? Ever since we started organizing society. But the problem always with this, when the system gets large, is the discoverability, trust, access, transactability, and any grievances, support in terms of solving some issues, they all fall apart. And how do you typically end up solving? You end up saying, okay, I'm going to build a platform right in the middle, and says providers list them on that and consumers find them. This is a pattern that all of you know. All of us have built it. In fact, it's always existed even pre-digital area. Whether it's a yellow pages, printed yellow pages, at least older people like us know, printed yellow pages where you could find a nearby plumber. Or even before that, people like, we used to have this brokers, human brokers who be in the middle, who's removing this information and trust asymmetry between the provider and the consumer and doing it. That's a platform play. So platform play is always the natural way to try addressing this fragmentation and mistrust and information asymmetry, trust asymmetry. And that's what you do all the time. But the problem with that is that platforms start capturing the value eventually. And platforms grow really large, they become systemically, they become a concentration risk and monopolization risk. And even after that, countries like India with extreme diversity, none of these platforms, large platforms, as we know of large platforms, like trillion-dollar companies or multi-billion-dollar companies, even they are not able to do more than 8-10% of the rest of the market. So the market is still fragmented, even after platform. It's never universal. So the real question we were asking ourselves, could we imagine something like this? Not one platform, let all of you build hundreds of different types of platforms out there. But can we imagine these platforms interoperating, connected on a shared set of rails or digital rails or set of protocols? The protocol thinking instead of platform thinking is very necessary to create a network effect of many platforms. Think internet. This is what internet did. HTTP, SMTP, TCP/IP created the ability to create a web and internet as we know. And that is not a private monopoly. Internet itself is a public good on top of many, many innovations happen. So with this model, so we were inspired by the internet itself to build something like this. And it said that this enables not a store of value, it enables flow of value exchange between the two platforms. Platforms continue to exist. All of you can build, many entrepreneurs can build many platforms, either on the consumer side platforms or apps, or supplier side, provider side, apps or platforms. And it reduces dramatically concentration risk, but most importantly, enable competition, innovation. And what we have seen is it expands the pie beyond the top 10%. Even with platform play, most platforms are unable to penetrate in India. So by creating this network effect, we believe you can create a very inclusive, where 200, 300 million people can participate. So when you expand the pie, everybody benefits. All the participants, all the entrepreneurs benefits in the system, right? Because the overall transactions have dramatically increased. And that's a real shift. The shift we have done in India is to move, systematically think about what does it mean to create open networks and not open platforms. And that is what we did with UPI, Universal Payment Interface. And latest, the last 2 years, we launched the Financial Data Account Aggregator, Financial Data Exchange Network. These two networks have shown that an idea like open network using a protocol, open protocol, definitely works. And UPI has gone from nearly zero transaction in 2016 to 4.6 billion transactions a month today, so in 5 years. So to 6 years. So you can see how fast the network effect kicked in. We have hundreds of fintechs and hundreds of banks and wallet providers are all joining, not creating a walled garden, rather creating an interoperable network that allows me to use any app, you to use any app, still exchange money the way we exchange email, any app to any app, right? Literally. And that's how our payments work today. Similarly, Account Aggregator is a financial data network powered by an open source protocol called Depot. These two showed India that this can be done, very well done. And it opens up a massive amount of entrepreneurship, developer ecosystem, and the startup ecosystem who provide diverse solution, and hence bringing beyond the top 10% of the society, inclusion of that society into the formal economy, right? That's very key. And that's the way we were thinking. The same way we build lower level protocols like TCP/IP. Can we create higher order protocols that allows higher mobility domain, commerce net, financial network, mobility network, and health networks to come up, a semantic network to come up. And that's what we were doing now in the last 2 years. So Kochi is a city in India. And Kochi Open Mobility Network is world's first open mobility network where there is no central platform. Without a central platform, using an open source protocol called Beckn. There is a talk later today or tomorrow for you. Please do attend a very deep dive, developer deep dive on Beckn protocol. But it uses Beckn protocol and to create these three networks: a mobility network, an e-commerce network called ONDC, and a healthcare and wellness network called UHI, all built on the semantic protocol called Beckn. Beckn is a semantic protocol that allows business transactions to be interoperable. Discovery, fulfillment, returns, grievances, rating, many of these services that gets done in a central platform is unbundled into an open set of API. And I'm giving you a snapshot of how Beckn look like, becknprotocol.io. You can go there and you will see a powerful set of domain layers, semantic layers in various domains like mobility, healthcare service, commerce, of course, where it's allowing the platform to be, on the left, you will see that in this picture, platform to the two-sided market to get split into provide consumer side apps and platforms and provider side. The difference between the traditional platform is that consumer and the provider has to be on the same platform. But in the case of a network, the consumer can be on one app or a platform, and provider can be on another app or a platform, and they are still discoverable, transactable, and exchange value at the end of the day, right? Pay, buy, and all that transactions. And the protocol encapsulates very well set of APIs, standard domain-specific semantic schemas, and machine-readable schemas. They're all JSON schema-based. A large open source community working on it. It's completely open source, by the way, and a huge open source. There is no runtime. It's a bunch of specifications. It doesn't. Beckn is not a network. Beckn is a protocol that allows networks to be created by anyone around the world, and it encapsulates dual-sided signed digital contracts, smart contracts between the buyer seller. It creates platform discovery options, packet switching, and you have this detailed session coming up later on Beckn. So please do, if you are interested, do check it out. But the fundamental shift is really from a central platform storing and intermediating, a platform intermediating value exchange. From that model, we are moving to a decentralized interconnected set of platforms, doing a direct value exchange without intermediating central platform, an operator-driven platform-centric model, monolithic or eventually become monopolistic, a facilitator-driven network. There is no central platform. So the topology of that network is a mesh sort of network, and not topology is not a central platform-centric topology. So that's very important to create that kind of open network. And this fundamentally, it's necessitates India's large, diverse structure, growing startup ecosystem, diverse usage scenario necessitates an approach like this for true inclusion. And it allows all kinds of innovation. That's another reason, right? We allow startup innovation and enterprise level innovation, developers, tech service providers, SDKs. Many of hundreds of developers are actually building all these things on top of Beckn, because Beckn itself is open source, so people can build on top of that. And that's really happening. Thousands of developers and entrepreneurs are both innovating and contributing to this protocol and network development efforts in India. And this is opening up the next level of internet-like boom in the area of mobility, commerce, hospitality, healthcare and wellness, now soon education and skilling, all a massive opening up to create billions of transactions for several hundred million people to participate. You as developers are the integral part of that journey, because you are both builders of such protocols, open source. You should participate in open source if you can, and also builders of the innovation on top of the protocol, who will build innovative applications, platforms, SDKs and tools, and data analytics and AI-based algorithms, underwriting algorithms, and all kinds of interesting stuff, catalog algorithms, matching recommendation algorithms, to build, but on a network that allows you to be participating in massively inclusive development journey. So I encourage you to attend the Beckn protocol session, participate in open source, and definitely be part of India's massive journey of an inclusive digital economy push. Thank you.